Coming up today, it's episode 100 of In the Front Row with Mike Vaccaro. Fitting of the occasion, our guest is motorsports icon Mario Andretti. Andretti joins us to share his journey from a refugee camp in Italy to Nazareth, Pennsylvania. He takes us behind the wheel in some big races, the Daytona 500, Indianapolis 500, and also a big crash in 2003. He also talks about his family and their role in the racing business that he helped create. All that and more, a special episode, our 100th episode of In the Front Row with Mike Vaccaro, featuring motorsports icon Mario Andretti. Mario, I can't thank you enough for joining us here today. It's such a treat to have you on and joining us for our 100th episode. Certainly a great guest that's fitting of that honor. But, you know, for you, obviously, motorsports, a lot to get into there. Great story. But let's start at the beginning if we can. Born in Italy. And you were a guy that, 8 years old after World War II, you found yourself in a refugee camp in Italy. What do you remember of that time and maybe how, early on that time helped make you who you are today?
Well, obviously, as you could see, I was born when the Second World War started. And up until that point, obviously, I knew nothing about war, which is uncertainty, if you will. Even though you're just a child, but you hear things, conversations with the family and agreements, disagreements, and then tragedies and all that sort of thing. But, by the time, as you say, by the time we were in refugee camp, we had left our land to be able, to avoid succumbing to hardline communism, because the area where I was born, the peninsula of Istria, that was ceded to Yugoslavia after the 1947 Paris Pact. Anyway, going forward, we were in a refugee camp from 48 to 55, from age 8 to 15, and along the way, obviously, there was, a lot of uncertainty, as I said, especially from my parents, my father's side. He felt responsibilities to be able to provide. And anyway, we kept, we were in touch with an uncle on my mother's side, who had immigrated in America many years before. And so he suggested in 1952 to my dad, he says, things, not getting better. He said, why don't you apply for a visa and come to America? And so my dad did. And but he almost forgot about it because the visa was approved only 3 years later, 1955. So we were asked to go to to visit the American consul in Genova. And so be vetted there, if you will, before totally approved. And that's it. My dad said this a million times, but my dad says, okay, everybody, we're going to America maybe for 5 years and then come back. That was the message that he had because, uncertainty, obviously. And but what was great at the time, my older sister, Anna Maria, 6 years older than us, so she was obviously much more with the situation. And she was very, very positive about things. And if you can believe this, June 16th, 1955, we're sailing by the Statue of Liberty at 5 a.m, beautiful morning. And she was singing. She was at the bow of the ship, Conte Biancomano, singing the American national anthem that she had learned. So that was the beginning, basically, of our life in America, 1955.
The beginning of an American success story, as we're going to get into.
American dream, actually. I always said that if there's a perfect example of the American dream, our family are that example.
Well, you wound up in Nazareth, Pennsylvania. People might think, oh, that's just a random place, but it was random and it led to your career, right? Because there you found your speedway, Nazareth Speedway. How did that lead to, your love and your passion for motorsports?
Well, that's it. As you say, Mike, that was the beginning because we arrived in June, so the full race season was already on. And we arrived on a Thursday, and by Sunday, we were in my uncle's house, which is on the south side of the town. And it was a Sunday night. That's when they used to have Sunday night races there. And all of a sudden, we see bright lights and a roar of engines. And Aldo and I just looked at each other. We just booked, we followed the sound, and here we are. We're peeking through a fence, and we see these brute-looking modified stock cars. And, the last race actually that we had seen before we came to America in 1854, some friends took us to Monza to see the Italian Grand Prix, and which was a dream because my absolute idol was the current world champion at the time, Alberto Ascari with Ferrari. And that's when the dream really began, quite honestly. Daddy always said that's where the mold was cast. And from there on, I always say, there was no plan B. But anyway, arriving here in America, all of a sudden, racing. And the first thing that we even thought, Aldo and I and my twin brother, we said, you know what? This is, looking at those cars, something sparked at us. He said, this is doable. In other words, you're looking at the Formula One cars. I mean, it's something almost impossible, so far away, so sophisticated. But this, I said, you know what? We could probably start doing this. And 2 years later, we started building a car, to race there. That's so, as you can see, things just started falling into place. But we were just driven by this absolute passion and love, and something, and will to just go forward in whatever way possible.
And is it true you and your brother Aldo, you kind of lied about your experience to be able to get in these races?
There were a lot of these things, yeah. First of all, okay, so we had the car, it's a long story, how this happened. We had some help, obviously. You put some buddies together, and then you got the geek that knows everything. And so we did a pretty good job. But anyway, we were underage, and we had to actually have the local editor of the local paper, guy Les Young. We befriended him through, hanging out at my uncle's gas station, and to change our birth date on the license, because in those days to race professionally, you had to be 21. And we were only 19. We started building the car in 57, and in 59, it was ready. So we were not going to wait 2 years, So anyway, and on the world, and we didn't necessarily look like, any older than what we are. In other words, we looked 19. And so we decided to really play the part, number one. So, we have experience. We've been racing in Italy, Formula Junior, but we also sent for racing suits, racing Italian, Sala Sport. And I always say we had all the zippers and everything. And so we looked professional, in those days, nobody had a racing suit on, they had like a t-shirt, whatever, and so it's, oh, wow, these kids from Italy. But the thing about it is that, one car, one helmet, two drivers. So it was toss, Aldo wins the toss. And for the first race, he won the heat and the feature. And we were in hock for over $1,000 that we had to borrow from the bank and friend, that Jim Taviani signed for us and everything else. And we won $25 for the heat, $125 $25 for the feature. So it was $150 right away. But the point is, it hit the papers. And then, we did some winning. I won the following week, blah, blah, blah. And it crashed and all that. But all of a sudden, it's in the papers here. And the story that we used to be race Formula Junior in Italy. That story, by the way, is in Wikipedia, still around. And our relatives in Italy says, "You little devils! You never told us that you were racing, Cagliari in Italy." So that story has mileage, and then anyway, but that's how this thing went, at the beginning of our life in this pursuit.
A little lie that went a long way, right? To get you guys jump started. That's all right to lie if it's like that. 21 wins and 46 races for you guys during that time. Again, you guys, started at 19, getting into the 60s and getting into more of your career. How did you kind of get into, going from that to NASCAR, IndyCar, and everything else, and so many disciplines of racing, so not just one style?
Well, Mike, it's all about trying to map out, what it should be as far as it's like going to school. You start from kindergarten, first grade, and so on and so forth. But you don't want to repeat. I didn't want to repeat that year. I wanted to move forward. So the minute that I raced 2 years stock cars, and our own car. And then I figured I got to get into something more formal. I wanted to get it single seaters. And so we thought about, I figured we got to get into midgets. That would be the next step. And that was so prominent, the midget racing, especially on the East Coast and with the ARDC. But in order to get there, I figured before you get to full-size midgets, you get to three-quarter midgets. And the best part about that is that in those days, they used to have three-quarter midgets during the winter in hockey arenas.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And it was very, very popular because some of all the champions, from full-size used to race there. So, but it was a place to be noticed. And guess what? My eventual wife, Deanne, her dad, obviously got to know her dad. I talked him into, but he and his partner, and they had a small business to fork and buy me a three-quarter midget. And a three-quarter, I bought that from the president of the three-quarter midget club, Jack Dowie, and it was a famous car. They called it Famous Deuce. That drivers like Bobby Marshman had driven, so on and so forth. So I could see that we did the right thing. And the deal was, I'll tell you what, the deal you couldn't refuse, because I said every penny that I prize money that I earn, you will get half of it. And then when we sell the car, it's all yours. So anyway, and that was a tough deal because, man, to keep it going and everything else, it's another story, But that was really a big stepping stone for me because I won the biggest race of the season in Teaneck Armory in New Jersey, the 100-lapper. And guess who was second to me? It was Len Duncan, who was one of the top ever major race drivers. And so that earned me a ride into a full-size midget. And with the Mateka brothers, which was really was fabulous for me. But I was moving forward. And what really, really worked for me, that Labor Day 1963, I won 3 races, 3 features in one day. And it was the afternoon, Flemington, New Jersey. The evening event was in Hatfield, Pennsylvania. And there were 2 features because the second feature was a rain out that had to be concluded. So in a clean house that day, and it's what's amazing is that the broadcast, the announcer for the event was none other than Chris Economaki, who he was actually the editor of Speed Sport News, which was the Bible of motor racing at the time. And if you got noticed by Chris Economaki, it was a big deal. And when I was on my cool down lap of the third feature, I heard the shrill. He said, "Mario, you just won the ticket to the big time." That one resonated with me tremendously. And but I always said, I even told Dan Gurney this, that when I was just before I got pushed off for the third feature, it was really a busy day, obviously. And I was thinking, what I was thinking? I was thinking about Dan Gurney that just it was his first, got a ride in Formula One. Another American, going into Formula. I was thinking of Formula One while I was in the midget in 1963 Labor Day. You know what I mean? So it's just amazing how things just progress for me. And from there on, once, some more races there. And then the objective was to just move on and get into sprint cars and USAC, which is where you're up against all the top level driver at the time, the Parnelli Jones, the AJ Foyts, the McCluskeys, the Dan Bransons, and so on and so forth, the answers, and which were my seniors. And anyway, so I get a ride. Actually, the thing that's, I look back is fortunate I was through some misfortunes of others, because even both rides, even the midget full size ride I got, because the driver that preceded me was killed. And I did the same thing. I got the same thing, with a sprint car. But anyway, I was there and took advantage of it. And then I won actually a race that propelled me, because there was another, injury and fatality in the top level of IndyCars. The Dean Van Lines was one of the top three teams in USAC. Their driver, Chuck Halls, was the one that actually he was killed at New Bremen. And but anyway, and I win the race, a 100-lapper in Salem, Indiana, and where all the top guys were there, the AJs and so on and so forth. And so all of a sudden, I said, my name was floating around, and if driver was needed, so I got a test, with the Dean Van Line car in Trenton, New Jersey, doing the Firestone tire test. And I won that ride, actually, because seemed like I impressed somebody, So, and that's how it started, to get from there on, the following year. This was 1964 then, and it was before Indy, but the team manager, who was Clint Browner, he was a savvy professional there with a lot of wisdom, and I said, "Mario, you're not ready. Okay, you're not ready for Indy. We'll hire you after Indy, after Linehorn, actually." Because Linehorn, they lost their driver, Jimmy Brown, the year before, so he didn't want to put me in any more danger situation that I should at the time because of the experience. Anyway, so we had a really a good season with them, getting me prepped. And in my first full season in USAC, I was a Rookie of the Year at Indy, finishing third. but I won the national championship. I was the youngest driver at the time to win the national championship, which was, for me, obviously, it was, things were going forward, at the pace that I could just dream about, to be honest with you. So things were just progressing.
Yeah, that was at just 25 years old. But you mentioned, other people's misfortunes, opening the door for you. How does that work in your head? Because do you think about that yourself, about crashing and about your own, mortality when you're in a race car, especially at that early age?
Well, I always said I could not dwell on it. If you dwelled on that, I mean, you were in the wrong business. Unfortunately, that's what the sport was pretty cruel in those decades. The safety factor, just was certainly not really dealt with. Like, it took a long time for this, the sport of motor racing to really wake up and start realizing that the argument from the drivers, we started to actually organize a little bit so there would be one voice for all, and started talking about, every year, there's technical improvements. We're getting better and better. Why can't we just use a lot of that knowledge to make the car safer?
Mm-hmm.
And you had to go about it in such a way that you couldn't show that you had concerns about that. You had to be macho, So you know what? It is what it is, and you go for it. And so, it's just you had to deal with it because it was there. And again, if you dwelled on that negative, it was not going to work anywhere. I can only speak for myself.
Mm-hmm.
I was driven with such passion and love that it was nothing was going to deter me. I mean, my brother almost lost his life from the very last race of the first season. And while he was still in a coma in the hospital, I asked the doctor, I said, what should I say? What should I, when he talked to me, I to say that people are in a coma, sometimes they hear you. And so what was I telling Aldo? I said, Aldo, I'm building a new car. I mean, while he was in a hospital, and we were going there every night, driving 58 miles to the hospital in Hatfield, Pennsylvania, for about 3 weeks. And I says, Aldo, I'm building a new car for that. That's what I was talking about. This is my brother there. He was given his last rites, that's after that evening, at Hatfield. So anyway, as I say, you just say, okay, the sport is, can be cruel, but I'm not going to be the one. You just and all along I felt that I will probably not make the mistake that will kill me. I will make probably the only thing that I felt I have no control over is some obviously mistakes made in front of me by somebody else, perhaps, or equipment failure. I had to go with that. I had to go with obviously that line of thinking, So, but again, it was tough. I hate to talk about these things, but the reality is, I lost some of my closest friends throughout the decades, the closest friends. And the tough part was actually, I had an early, a young family. Deanna and I married very young, and I had a pretty good idea what Deanna was thinking about whenever we were, those things would happen. And she had friends, my closest friends at the time was Billy Foster. Yeah, 2 young children like we did. And then, Beverly, his wife, and Deanne, she saw that all of a sudden she's there alone. She, when he had his accident, and you know what I mean. It was just there was a lot of that, Quite honestly, just to labor a little more on that, is DN really helped by not, making me feel guilty for pursuing my career, being selfish, because that's what I wanted to satisfy myself and taking these risks. She supported me no matter what. And all of that really worked. When you don't think about those things at the time, you just go on. But when time goes on, you started reflecting on, what really kept me going. Yes, I had that strength. I didn't do it alone. And that goes for in all the other factors, all the other areas, that you just, you rely on people to give encouragement and actually on the side appreciate, okay, he's probably got that on his mind and he still goes, that type of thing, So this, a lot goes on.
Yeah. And there's a lot to think about when you're behind the wheel and racing that fast. And like you said, control what you can control. And for you, you did that a number of times, a number of big races for you. 1967 Daytona 500 winner, 1969 Indianapolis 500 winner. Are those the two races? Or are there others in your mind that stick out as ones that you now look back at fondly and remember the most?
Every race is important to me equally. It doesn't matter. I mean, a lot of people obviously, I won championships, and then they a lot of people remember one race. Like especially even today. Oh, Indy, it's in 1969. But then I won the third national championship, and you know what I mean. To me, it's different the way I look at the races. Every single race that I won, is gave me that ultimate satisfaction to that point. And they're all important, believe me. I mean, if I had to select, for instance, going back, I look at what started this thing, what sparked my dream, my impossible dream, was Monza, when I saw the Formula One race. And for me, winning in Monza, I won in sports cars, 1,000 Ks, I won Formula One, and I clinched the world championship in Monza. I mean, how do you put that one together? You see what I mean?
Yeah.
So I know that it's divine strength there, divine providence that actually gave me that, So, and I don't take it for granted by any means. You see what I mean? There's so many factors that, how did all this come together? Am I blessed or what? You see what I mean? That's the way I look at it.
And I know open car was always your goal. Why that? Why, what attracted you to that as opposed to some of the other disciplines that are out there?
Well, mainly because I think it's the truest form of the sport. It's not a derivative on anything. I look at the open wheel single seater car like a fighter aircraft. It's only built and designed to do one thing. A stock car is a derivative of what you drive to the grocery store type of thing, and all that. But or a sports car is something you can even drive on the streets. So it's the purest form of the sport. Single seater, IndyCar, Formula One, sprint cars, and so on and so forth. So that's what attracted me. And those are, to me, what gave me probably the most satisfaction, if you will, because of what they are. The speed factor, reaction time, all of that does not compare with any other level of driving.
Is there one that's more challenging than another?
That open wheel single seaters, trust me.
Why?
Because I tried all the others. I have a clear comparison. Not to take anything away from it. They all have their quirks, the specialty and so forth. But to me, the ultimate challenge was that the open wheel single seaters.
What's it like when you're behind the wheel like that? Take us through kind of, that feeling, that emotion you get when you're behind the wheel in an open wheel car.
Well, like I said, it's I almost feel like I picture myself because this is what I want. This is what my ultimate desire was to do this, and then the ultimate satisfaction when you have that day. When you win, it's your day, and nothing else compares to that, in my opinion. You see, that was the absolute reward that justifies all the effort, all the sacrifices, everything else that goes into it.
You look at again all your wins you had. You won in Pocono back in 1986 in your 14th start there. So in what became your home state is, again, as you look back at your career, is that a memorable race as well? I know you said all of them and all your wins are memorable, but where does that stack up?
Well, obviously, you just mentioned, it's a local race, a big race. I was, involved. I was asked to be involved when the facility was being constructed, but the Marioli family, Doc Marioli, and so forth. So I had that special meeting, and I got to tell you about 1986 at Pocono. There was a supporting event for the 500, and my younger son Jeff was driving what is now called the Indy lights, and he was on pole for that race. He won that race. My older son Michael was on pole for the 500, and I won the 500. So here comes back to the family, the satisfaction that as a family that we had throughout, because both my sons and nephews, also John and so forth, that and they were part of the sport. But Michael, my son Michael, and I were on podium in an IndyCar 15 times. We were first and second 5 times, and on the front row of an IndyCar race 10 times. It was 5, 10, and 15. Can you imagine that? And the satisfaction that gives me. 1991 and 92, 4 members of my family, which was my 2 sons and my nephew John and myself, qualified both years for the Indy 500, which as a family never happened before or since. So when you look back, how could you not really be thankful and feel like you've been blessed when things like that happen to you and the family?
And your grandson Marco as well, 2006 IndyCar Rookie of the Year. Again, we talked about it earlier. It's kind of the American dream, right? You came from Italy, with not a whole lot, and then to see not just your success, but your family's success. Do you get more out of seeing the success your sons had, your grandson as well?
Absolutely. You have no idea, how I root for them in every possible way. I know what they're going through. I know what they're dealing with. And it's, again, I'm so proud, of seeing them, loving what it's been my passion, my life.
April 2003, if we could talk about this for a second, 63 years old, and you're doing a test lap, right? And you had a crash. And this was spinning crash, 3 spins, you flipped in the air, and you walked away with just a scratch on your chin. What do you remember about that moment?
Well, I thought that finally that was it. It was up in the air. That thought, comes to mind, because I've been, I've dodged quite a few bullets, in my career. And that was another one that I did, quite honestly. It was, I was actually testing for my son's team. His regular driver, Tony Kanaan, had a wrist injury. at the race, there was the race before the Indianapolis 500 in Japan, and there was a chance that he would not have been able to qualify for the 500, but he would have been able to race because it was just a wrist injury. And so my son Michael was looking, to have somebody to potentially qualify for him. And we were talking about it, in the kitchen, and my daughter Barbie says, Mike, why don't you put that in there? And Mike thought for a second. He says, looked at me. I said, I'll do it. I said, as long as I must have, I got to have a good proper test, because at that point I had not been in a race car for 9 years.
Wow.
Because I retired in '94. So this was 2003. And so there was a proper test. All the teams were at Indianapolis, open test. And things were really going well because Michael had, usually got a good car, good engineers and everything else. And I was in Tony's car, and things were going well. Actually, better than I thought. And I felt right with it, I was in my, what would it call? In my zone. And so anyway, and I had at that moment, toward the end of the day, I had the fastest lap by myself without a tow. Actually in Indianapolis, we slipstream, we can pick up 2-3 miles an hour easily, and they put a big number on the board. So anyway, it was the last run of the day. And I'm out there, and actually I caught a beautiful tow from the other team, which was Kenny Brack. It was one of that regular driver at the time, very good. And he was in Honda, same car with basically the same engine. I had a perfect setup, and I figure, okay, I'm going to go for a big lap. And we go into turn one, and he blew the engine. The engine scattered, and he crashed pretty bad. And I had no warning, because when you're testing, you don't have the communications that you do normally during the race. And when I arrived there, I was scattered. There was stuff, debris all over the place. And I hit something in the middle of the track, which was actually part of the safe wall. Came out. And that got under my car, and just, and that's it. It just elevated my car to the point that it started flying. And actually, at that point, I was exiting turn one 222 miles an hour, according to telemetry. And that's when I started flying like an F-16. But luckily, I landed on 4 wheels, and I had something here with my heel. Was but scratching my chin, and somebody was looking after me there as well. But anyway, it was not my fault, which actually is encouraging to me. And quite honestly, if I would have had to qualify for him, I would have, no question about it. But he was okay well enough that he qualified himself. This was just an insurance thing, but it was another one where I figured, oh man, here we go. But I got away with it.
As you said, you control what you can. You couldn't control that because of the debris. You're going through some. Do you do anything with your body to try to protect yourself? I mean, you're exposed and all, but what do you do in that moment?
You're right. You're right along. There's nothing you can do. Not a thing you can do. It just you do the normal things. You try to keep back from the steering wheel. And that. Just there's certain things that in case you're in such a situation, you try to potentially minimize the potential injuries that you might receive. But other than that, that's it. You're in it for the ride.
People always talk about it. Is motorsports? Is it a sport? Is it not? What went into like your training in addition to or outside the car? Were there things that you did to make sure that you were physically prepared once you got behind the wheel?
Are you kidding? I mean, I'm telling you, that's where a lot of people don't realize. You know why? because it's such a non-participant sport.
Mhm.
How many people can get in a race car and realize? I mean, I'm telling you, physically, you better be on it. And the one thing a lot of people say, oh, well, you didn't have very rigorous program. I was in a race car. I was in a race car every other week. I mean, if you're a fighter and you fight at least, once a week, are you going to be training in the gym during the week? No, you're going to rest. You only train if you're off for a month, 2 months, or 3. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But the physical side is all absolutely. I mean, today when drivers don't drive as much because there's not as much testing, obviously they all have a very rigorous training program that they go through. But believe me, it's even a matter of pride, because it's been known that we used to say some drivers, they fall out of the seat and so on and so forth. So all you have to do is slow down 1 or 2%, and then you're gone. You're nothing, and you have to look at yourself in the mirror the next day. And I tell you what, that's something I didn't want to see anything that I would be embarrassed about. I said that I gave it my all. I mean, I remember that the one race and there were several, but and one Sebring race at 12-hour that Bruce McLaren and I won. I mean, it was one of the toughest races because a lot of the air intakes, were just actually got stuffed up with debris, papers, and so forth. So the track was a windy day, and it was so hot, and I was just destroyed almost. And then at the day after Sebring, I was in Atlanta 500 in a stock car, and when I got back, after stock car race, I got back in the hotel. I was there for 3 days. My wife trying to hydrate me.
Yeah.
When I went home, I think my eyes were sunken 3 inches into my head, and my mother looked at me. She started crying. That's how much sometimes rigor you go through physically, and a lot of people don't realize that. But I hear sometimes, I've heard this time, maybe some basketball players or someone. I said, "Oh yeah, motor racing. They're not athletes. What the heck? I can drive 500 miles to see my Aunt Jemima, and so on and so forth, and it's not a problem." You have to try yourself a little bit, maybe go to even driving school, and you realize, what goes into it. So, yeah, I'm proud of that side of it, and I would, anybody that doubts that, they need to try it.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about the mental side and the physical side, as you said, being in those cars and those heat. It can't be easy, but hey, you made it look easy. So many honors for you, so many halls of fame that you're a part of as well. When you look at that, when you think of that, are there any of those that really stick out, or any honors that you've received that you to this day really think highly of?
Well, Mike, any honor outside of, especially, when you win a race, you get a trophy because you finish first. The other honors like halls of fame and so forth, it's the ultimate compliment because, it's something that's judgmental in a sense, that a group or whatever, they have to analyze and compare you vis-a-vis, your other, your competitors and so on and so forth. And if you're chosen, that particular time, it's a matter of pride, for sure. I mean, how can you not be proud and flattering, for sure. I don't take that lightly, believe me, and I've been very fortunate in that respect.
Also fortunate to do a little acting. You were on Home Improvement, a couple episodes of that years ago. What was the acting like for you in the moments to be in front of the camera?
Oh, that was fun. It was fun because it was, as you can imagine, a very light thing. You could just, do your thing. And I mean, it's one of those light experiences, those things that you would not necessarily think, oh, yeah, will I ever have the opportunity to do that? But you do. And yeah, make the best of it. But it was fun.
Andretti Global now. Tell us a little bit about that. How else you're still involved with racing and different things going on?
Yeah, I mean, that's still my life, and it's the family is still involved, which helps. So whether they are or not, that sport will always be part of me, and will always attend. And I have so many friendships there and so forth. But there's a lot of pride in. For me, as far as the family involvement, got my son Michael, what he has, achieved, not only as a driver, but as a team owner and so on and so forth. It's something that sure he's proud of us, so am I. And again, the sport will always be part of me.
And what do you think of the sport now? And you're involved in it now. Would you continue to try to help it evolve, help it to continue to, become a better sport, a safer sport as well?
All of it. I mean, I want the sport to thrive, and I'm only happy when things are better, or attendance and interest and all of that. I mean, it's everything to me. If events are maintaining the popularity or become more popular, it makes me happy. I'm jolly about that, and I will always do everything possible to be an ambassador, for what I love, because my love is not diminished in any way. That's been my life. It will always be until they put me in the box.
Well, it's a love, it's a passion as well, and I can tell it just from hearing you talk about it. And it's been an incredible life for you. Like you said, you've certainly continued to live the American dream, coming over here from Italy and what you've done. And boy, I can't thank you enough for spending a little time with us, sharing your story, and again, hearing and thankfully, those crashes for you have nothing serious has come of those. So you've been a lucky man, as you said, for many, many years, and hopefully that continues to be the same for many more years to come.
Thank you. Thank you, Mike. Thanks for having me.
Amazing to have motorsports icon Mario Andretti join us for our 100th episode. We thank him for his time. Also, we thank Patty Reed and Amy Hollebush for helping arrange that sit down with the legend Mario Andretti. As always, we thank you as well for watching and listening, and invite you to like, to share, and to subscribe as we try to continue to grow our show and continue to bring you great guests. For our creator, producer, and director, JR Equipment behind the scenes, I'm Mike Vaccaro. We thank you for watching. We'll see you next week as we have episode 101. Ryan Nyquist from the world of BMX Freestyle is our guest. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you then. Have a great day, everybody.